Welcome back to HOA Consequences. The snow was not the problem, the HOA was. I am standing on my front walkway in Montreal on a January morning so cold, my breath freezes before it clears my face, and Linda Parker is screaming at me about a bucket of ice melt salt. She is holding a printed storm photo packet with no readable text, waving it in my face, her keyring jingling loudly enough to cut through the wind. "I will make an example out of you so everyone learns," she shouts, her voice cracking on the last word. "You think you can ignore the appearance standards and get away with it? You are wrong." I moved to Montreal 3 years ago for work as a landscape irrigation tech, thinking I would finally escape the micromanagement nightmare of my last HOA in Vermont. The Parkside Snow Emergency Corridor Homeowners Association looked reasonable on paper. Snow removal protocols, emergency access rules, standard stuff for a place where winter lasts half the year. What I did not know was that every rule required a form, and every form required another form, and Linda Parker, the finance committee lead, had turned the entire system into a weapon. My reputation in this neighborhood is everything. I work with property managers and landscape companies all over the city, and if the HOA starts spreading rumors that I am a problem tenant, I lose referrals. That is what is at stake here. Linda knows it, and she is using it. The bucket of ice melt salt is sitting exactly where I left it this morning, next to my front steps. A bright orange Home Depot bucket with a scoop inside. I put it there because the walkway ices over every night, and I leave for work at 6 in the morning, when it is still dark. Linda is claiming the bucket violates appearance rules under Section 12.4 of the Covenant, a section I have read 4 times, and which says absolutely nothing about ice melt containers. This is not the first time Linda has come after me. 3 weeks ago, she sent me a violation notice for not shoveling my driveway within 4 hours of a snowfall. The notice arrived 2 days after the snow stopped, which meant I had already shoveled twice. When I pointed this out at a board meeting, she said I must have missed the deadline and the portal notification system had a lag. I asked to see the portal logs. She said they were not available to residents. 2 weeks ago, she fined me $200 for leaving a snow shovel leaning against my garage door. I moved the shovel the same day I got the notice, and when I submitted photographic proof with timestamps, she said the photos did not prove when I moved it. I asked for an appeal hearing. She said I could request one in writing, but the form was not on the portal yet. 1 week ago, she had my truck towed from the guest parking area while I was at a work site in Laval. I came back at 8 in the evening to find an empty space and a note on my door saying the vehicle was removed for violating the 72-hour guest parking rule. I have a resident parking pass. The truck was in the guest lot because my assigned spot was blocked by a plow drift. When I called the tow company, they said the authorization came directly from Linda Parker, and when I confronted her, she said she was enforcing emergency snow corridor access, and I should have moved the truck to the street. The tow cost me $340. I have not been reimbursed. Now she is standing in front of me, her face red and her voice shaking with what I can only describe as rage, telling me that the bucket of ice melt salt is a hazard, an eyesore, and a violation of community standards. "I can put you on the agenda and keep you there," she says, jabbing her finger toward my chest. "You will be the example everyone remembers." I kept my hands open and my voice calm, because the real move was still ahead. I have a notary appointment booked for this afternoon at 2. If I miss it, my dispute packet gets delayed by weeks, and Linda knows it. She has timed every single confrontation to happen right when I am about to leave for work in icy conditions. This morning is no exception. I am supposed to be in Westmount by 7:30 to inspect a burst irrigation line, and it is already 7:15. Linda is still talking. She is saying something about how the bucket creates a slipping hazard because people might trip over it in the dark, which is insane because the entire point of the bucket is to prevent slipping. I let her finish, and then I ask her to show me the specific rule. She flips through the storm photo packet, which I now realize is not actually a rule book, but a collection of printed photos of my property taken from the street. There is a photo of the bucket. There is a photo of my driveway. There is a photo of my truck in the guest lot. Every photo has a timestamp in the corner, and I notice immediately that 2 of the timestamps are from dates when I was not even home. "Where did you get these?" I ask. She ignores the question. "The board has decided that you are a repeat offender," she says. "We are moving forward with a lien, a line, for a bucket of ice melt salt." I pull out my phone and take a photo of her holding the packet. She notices and steps back. "What are you doing?" she snaps. "Documenting this conversation," I say. "For my records." Her face goes white, and then it goes red again. "You do not have my consent to record me," she says. "I am not recording you," I say. "I am taking a photo of the evidence you are presenting." She turns and walks away, the key ring jingling, her boots crunching through the snow. Over her shoulder, she shouts, "You have until Monday to remove the bucket and pay the outstanding fines, or we proceed with the lien." Monday is 4 days away. I get in my truck and drive to Westmount, my hands shaking on the wheel. The irrigation line is a mess. The property manager meets me at the site and says the system froze because the shutoff valve was left partially open. It is going to take 3 hours to fix, which means I am not getting back to my neighborhood until after lunch. I work in silence, my mind running through the Linda problem. The tow logs are the key. I know this because I called the tow company back last week and asked for a copy of the dispatch record. The dispatcher, a guy named Mark, said he would email it to me. He sounded annoyed when I explained that the person who authorized the tow did not actually have the authority to do it. Mark said that happens all the time with HOAs, and if I wanted to dispute it, I should file a complaint with the company. I filed the complaint. I also requested the call recording under Quebec's consumer protection regulations. Mark said it would take a week. It has been 6 days. I finish the repair, pack up my tools, and check my phone. There is an email from Mark. Subject line, dispatch record request. I open it in the truck. The attachment is a 2-page PDF with call logs, timestamps, and a transcript of the authorization call. The call was placed at 4:17 in the afternoon on the day of the tow. The caller identified herself as Linda Parker, compliance officer for the Parkside Snow Emergency Corridor Homeowners Association. The dispatcher asked if she had authority to authorize the tow. She said yes. The dispatcher asked for a callback number. She gave her cell phone. The problem is that Linda Parker is not the compliance officer. The compliance officer is a guy named Richard Toussaint, and he has been on medical leave since November. I know this because Richard sent an email to all residents in December saying he would be unavailable and that any compliance issues should go through the property management company. Linda has been signing notices as compliance officer since the beginning of January. I have 4 notices in my file, all signed with her name and the title. I forward the email to my personal account, and then I forward it to the property management company with a single-line message: Linda Parker does not have authority to authorize tows. Please confirm. I do not expect a response before Monday, but I get one in 20 minutes. The property manager, a woman named Diane Mercier, replies, "We are reviewing this matter. Please do not communicate directly with board members until we complete our investigation." I sit in the truck for a long time, staring at that email. At 1:30, I drive to the notary appointment. The notary, a calm older man named Pierre, reviews my dispute packet and asks if I have any additional evidence. I show him the tow logs and the email from Diane. He raises his eyebrows and says, "This is a clear case of exceeding authority. If you can prove she has been doing this systematically, you have grounds for a formal complaint with the township and possibly a civil claim." I ask him what I need to prove it. He says I need a pattern, multiple incidents, documentation, and ideally a witness who can testify that Linda has been acting outside her role. I thank him and leave. On the drive back, I call my neighbor, an older man named George who has lived in the neighborhood for 15 years. George is the kind of guy who shows up to every board meeting with a notepad and asks uncomfortable questions. He has never liked Linda, and after the third time she fined him for putting his trash bins out 10 minutes early, he started keeping a file. I asked George if he would be willing to testify at a hearing if it came to that. He is quiet for a moment, and then he says, "I am scared of her, if I am being honest. She has made my life hell, but if you are going after her, I will back you up. Just tell me when." I thank him and hang up. That night, I go through every notice I have received since November. There are 8 in total. 6 are signed by Linda with the compliance officer title. 2 are unsigned but printed on HOA letterhead with her email address in the footer. I photograph every page, upload them to a cloud folder, and send the link to Pierre the notary. Then I sit down and write a formal demand letter to the Parkside Snow Emergency Corridor Homeowners Association Board of Directors. I outline every incident: the shoveling fine, the shovel fine, the tow, the bucket violation, and the pattern of harassment. I attach the tow logs, the call recording request, and a timeline showing that Linda has been signing documents as compliance officer without board authorization. I close the letter with a demand, retract all fines, reimburse the tow fee, and remove Linda Parker from any compliance role. I give them 7 days to respond. I print 3 copies, seal them in envelopes, and drive to the HOA office drop box. It is snowing again. The roads are slick, and the orange cone half buried in snow at the corner of my street is barely visible under the new layer. I take a photo of it because it feels like the perfect metaphor: buried, forgotten, and completely useless. Monday morning, I wake up to a new notice taped to my door. It is printed on HOA letterhead, unsigned, and it says that due to my failure to comply with prior notices, a formal hearing has been scheduled for Wednesday evening at 7. Attendance is mandatory. Failure to appear will result in automatic approval of all outstanding fines and initiation of lien proceedings. Wednesday is 2 days away. I call Diane Mercier. She does not answer. I leave a voicemail asking if the hearing is legitimate and if the board has responded to my demand letter. She calls back an hour later. Her voice is tight and professional. "The hearing is legitimate," she says. "The board has the right to schedule compliance hearings under the bylaws. As for your demand letter, the board is reviewing it, but I cannot comment further while the investigation is ongoing." I ask if Linda will be at the hearing. Diane says the entire board will be present, including Linda. I ask if I can bring a witness. Diane says yes, as long as the witness is a resident. I call George. He agrees to come. Tuesday morning, I get an email from the property management company. It is a forwarded message from the HOA board president, a retired engineer named Paul Dumas. The message says that the board has reviewed my complaint and determined that all fines and enforcement actions were issued in accordance with the governing documents. The board stands by its decision to proceed with the hearing. There is no mention of Linda's unauthorized use of the compliance officer title. There is no mention of the tow logs. There is no acknowledgement that anything unusual has happened. I reply to Diane, does the board dispute that Linda Parker has been signing notices as compliance officer without authorization? She does not respond. That afternoon, I get a call from Mark at the tow company. He says the call recording is ready and asks if I want him to email it or if I want to pick it up in person. I tell him to email it, and he does. The recording is 3 minutes long. Linda's voice is clear and confident. She identifies herself as the compliance officer, gives the address of my truck, and says it is blocking emergency snow corridor access. The dispatcher asks if the vehicle is marked as a resident vehicle. Linda says no. The dispatcher asks if she has tried to contact the owner. Linda says she left a notice on the door, and the owner did not respond. Both statements are lies. My truck has a resident parking pass on the windshield, and Linda never left a notice before calling the tow company. I save the recording to 3 different devices. Wednesday evening, I arrive at the HOA office at 6:45. George is already there, sitting in his car with the engine running. He looks nervous. I knock on his window and he rolls it down. You ready? I ask. He nods. Let's do this. The office is a small converted house near the main gate. The board meets in the former living room, which now has a folding table, 8 chairs, and a whiteboard covered in schedules and snow removal maps. Paul Dumas is sitting at the head of the table. Linda is sitting to his right, her key ring on the table in front of her, jingling every time she moves her hands. 2 other board members are present, a younger woman named Sandra and an older man named Michelle. Paul opens the meeting by reading a prepared statement about the purpose of the hearing and the board's commitment to fair enforcement. Then he turns to me and asks if I would like to present my case. I stand up. I have a printed outline, but I do not need it. I start with the shoveling fine and walk through every incident in order. I present the photos with timestamps, the tow logs, the call recording request, and the timeline showing Linda's unauthorized use of the compliance officer title. Linda interrupts 3 times. The first time, she says I am misrepresenting the facts. The second time, she says the board has discretion to interpret the rules. The third time, Paul tells her to wait until I am finished. When I am done, Paul asks if I have any additional evidence. I pull out my phone and play the tow company recording. Linda's voice fills the room. The dispatcher's questions. Linda's lies. When the recording ends, the room is silent. Sandra, the younger board member, looks at Linda and says, "You told the dispatcher he did not have a resident pass. He has a photo showing the pass on his windshield." Linda opens her mouth and closes it. Then she says, "I may have been mistaken about the pass. The vehicle was still blocking access." George stands up. He clears his throat and says, "Linda has been targeting residents for over a year. I have documentation of fines that were issued without proper notice, and I can provide testimony that she has been acting as compliance officer without board approval." Paul looks at Michelle, the older board member. Michelle looks at Linda. Linda's face is red again, but this time it is not anger. It is panic. Paul says, We need to adjourn and reconvene after we have reviewed this information. I say, no. We are finishing this now. You called this hearing to intimidate me into paying fines I do not owe. I have provided proof that Linda has been lying, exceeding her authority, and violating the bylaws. I want a decision tonight. Paul looks at Sandra. Sandra looks at Michelle. Michelle says, I move that we suspend all enforcement actions against this resident pending a full investigation. Sandra seconds the motion. Paul calls for a vote. Sandra and Michelle vote yes. Linda votes no. The motion passes. Paul says the meeting is adjourned. Linda grabs her keyring and walks out without looking at anyone. Thursday morning, I wake up to an email from Diane Mercier. The subject line is Management Company Investigation Update. The email says that the property management company has completed its preliminary review and determined that Linda Parker has been acting outside the scope of her board role. Effective immediately, Linda is removed from all compliance and enforcement duties. The board will be conducting a full audit of all fines and enforcement actions issued since November. I forward the email to George and to Pierre the notary. Friday afternoon, I get a call from Paul Dumas. He sounds tired. He says the board met in an emergency session last night and voted to remove Linda from the finance committee. She will remain on the board as a general member, but she will have no enforcement authority. I ask if the fines are being retracted. Paul says yes. All fines issued under Linda's authority are being voided, and I will receive a refund check for the tow fee within 10 business days. I ask if anyone else is getting refunds. Paul says the board is reviewing all enforcement actions from the past 6 months, and any resident who was fined under questionable circumstances will be contacted. I thank him and hang up. Saturday morning, I check the neighborhood Facebook group. There is a post from Linda, dated late Friday night. The post says that I have been spreading false allegations and that the board is investigating my harassment of HOA volunteers. The post has 15 comments, most of them from people who have had similar problems with Linda. By Saturday afternoon, the post is gone. In its place is a pinned post from Paul Dumas. The post says that the board is conducting an audit of recent enforcement actions and that any resident with concerns should contact the property management company directly. The post does not mention Linda by name, but everyone knows what it means. Sunday evening, George calls me. He says he just got a refund check for 3 fines he paid last year. He sounds almost giddy. They are going through everything, he says. This is huge. Monday morning, I drive past the main gate on my way to a job site in Verdun. There is a white van parked near the gate control box, and a technician is standing on a ladder with a tablet. I slow down and roll down my window. The technician sees me and waves. I pull over and get out. What are you working on? I ask. He says the HOA hired his company to audit the gate access system. Apparently, someone has been manually overriding access codes and blaming system glitches. He pulls up a log on his tablet and shows me a list of override entries. Every entry is timestamped, and every entry is tied to a board member login. Most of the entries are Linda's. The technician looks at me and says, "Your access code was locked out 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Every time, the override came from the same login." He points to Linda's name on the screen. I ask if he can print the log. He says he already sent it to the management company, but he can email me a copy if I want. I give him my email address. He sends it before I get back in the truck. Tuesday afternoon, I get a text from George. "Have you seen the group chat?" he asks. I do not have access to the board group chat, so I ask him what is going on. He says Linda posted a message this morning accusing me of filing a fraudulent complaint and demanding that the board take action. Paul Dumas responded by saying that the board does not discuss ongoing investigations in the group chat and that Linda should direct her concerns to the management company. Linda replied by threatening to sue the board for defamation. Paul removed her from the group chat. Wednesday morning, I get a voicemail from Diane Mercier. She says the board is scheduling an emergency meeting for Friday night and that I am invited to attend as an observer. She does not say what the meeting is about, but I can guess. Friday night, I arrive at the HOA office at 6:50. George is already there. So is Sandra, the younger board member. She looks exhausted. Paul arrives at 6:55 with Michelle. Linda arrives at 6:58 alone, her key ring jingling as she walks through the door. Paul opens the meeting by reading a statement. He says the board has completed its review of recent enforcement actions and has determined that multiple violations of the bylaws and the Quebec Civil Code occurred. He lists the violations: unauthorized use of the compliance officer title, false statements to third-party vendors, improper authorization of towing, and manipulation of the gate access system. He says the board has voted to remove Linda Parker from the board effective immediately. Linda stands up. Her face is white. "You cannot do this," she says. "I have not been given due process." Paul says the vote was conducted in accordance with the bylaws and that Linda was notified of the allegations last week. Linda says, "I will make an example out of you so everyone learns." Sandra looks at her and says, "You already said that." It did not work. Linda grabs her key ring and walks out. The room is silent for a long moment. Then Michelle says, "We need to issue a formal apology to every resident who was fined under her authority." Paul nods. He looks at me and says, "I am sorry this happened. We should have caught it earlier." I thank him and leave. If you are enjoying this, hit that subscribe button because we are just getting to the good part. The following Monday, I receive a letter from the property management company. The letter includes a formal apology, a check for $470 covering the tow fee and administrative costs, and a notice that all fines issued under Linda Parker's authority have been voided. The letter also says that the board is implementing new oversight procedures to prevent similar issues in the future. I deposit the check and file the letter with the rest of my documentation. Tuesday morning, I get a call from Pierre the notary. He says he has been reviewing the case and believes I have grounds for a small claims action against Linda personally for the costs associated with responding to her harassment. He estimates I could recover legal fees, lost work time, and possibly punitive damages. I tell him I will think about it. Wednesday afternoon, I get a text from George. Linda just posted on her personal Facebook page saying the HOA board is corrupt and that she is being targeted for standing up for community standards. The post has 12 comments, all from people pointing out that she was removed for violating the bylaws. Thursday morning, I check the neighborhood group. There is a new pinned post from Paul Dumas. The post says that the board has completed its audit and identified 43 enforcement actions that were improperly issued. Every affected resident is being contacted directly, and refunds will be issued within 30 days. The post does not mention Linda, but it does say that the board is implementing a new policy requiring all enforcement actions to be reviewed by the property management company before notices are issued. Friday evening, I run into Sandra at the grocery store. She sees me and walks over. "I just want to say thank you," she says. "You did what a lot of people were too scared to do." I ask her how the board is handling the fallout. She says it has been a nightmare, but it is also a relief. Linda had been operating unchecked for over a year, and no one wanted to challenge her because she was so aggressive. I ask if Linda is still living in the neighborhood. Sandra says yes, but she has not been to a board meeting or a community event since she was removed. Saturday afternoon, I am working in my garage when a car pulls up. It is a rideshare driver, and he is waiting at the curb with his window down. He sees me and rolls his eyes. "Your HOA is something else," he says. "I have been sitting here for 10 minutes waiting for my passenger, and some lady came out and yelled at me for blocking the street." I ask if the lady had a key ring that jingled. He laughs. "Yeah, that was her." I tell him to ignore her. She does not have any authority. He says, "Good to know," and drives off when his passenger comes out. Sunday morning, I check my email. There is a message from Mark at the tow company. He says the company has completed its internal review of the incident and determined that the dispatcher did not follow proper procedures when authorizing the tow. As a result, the company is issuing me a formal apology and a credit for any future towing services. I reply thanking him and asking if the company has changed its authorization procedures. He says yes, and that all HOA tow requests now require written authorization from the property management company. Monday afternoon, I get a call from Paul Dumas. He says the board held a special meeting over the weekend and voted to adopt a new set of enforcement policies. All compliance actions will now go through the property management company, and no board member will have unilateral authority to issue fines or authorize tows. I ask if the policies include any accountability measures for board members who violate the bylaws. Paul says yes, and that the board is also implementing term limits and requiring annual audits of all enforcement actions. I thank him and hang up. Tuesday morning, I wake up to an email from Diane Mercier. The subject line is Final Resolution. The email says that the property management company has completed its investigation and submitted a formal report to the board. The report confirms that Linda Parker exceeded her authority, violated the bylaws, and engaged in a pattern of harassment against multiple residents. The email also says that the management company has recommended that the board file a complaint with the Provincial Housing Tribunal to ensure that Linda cannot hold a similar position in any other HOA. I forward the email to George and to Pierre. Wednesday evening, I drive to the community footbridge near the main gate. The bridge is a narrow pedestrian walkway that crosses a small frozen creek, and it is one of the few places in the neighborhood where you can see the entire development. I park near the bridge and walk out onto the ice. The sun is setting, and the freezing fog is rolling in, making everything look haunted. I stand in the middle of the bridge and look out at the rows of identical houses, the snow-covered streets, and the orange cone half buried in snow at the corner of my street. I hear footsteps behind me. I turn and see Linda walking toward me. She is wearing her pink puffer coat and her white knit hat, and her keyring is jingling. She stops a few feet away and stares at me. "You ruined my reputation," she says. "I was trying to keep this neighborhood safe, and you made me look like a criminal." I do not respond. I just look at her. She takes a step closer. "You think you won," she says, "but I can put you on the agenda and keep you there. I still have friends on the board." I pull out my phone and open the email from Diane Mercier. I hold the screen toward her so she can see the subject line. She reads it, and her face goes pale. Then I pull out a printed copy of the tow company call recording transcript. I hold it up so she can see the highlighted sections where she lied to the dispatcher. "I kept this," I say, "and I sent a copy to the Township Compliance Office this morning, along with a formal complaint about your unauthorized enforcement actions and your manipulation of the gate access system." Her mouth opens, but no sound comes out. I step past her and walk off the bridge. Thursday morning, I get a text from George. The board just sent out an email saying Linda Parker has resigned from the board and is no longer involved in any HOA activities. I text back, "Good." Friday afternoon, I get a call from a number I do not recognize. I answer, and a woman's voice says, "Hello, this is Officer Renault from the Montreal Police. I am calling about a complaint filed regarding unauthorized vehicle towing and possible fraud. Do you have a few minutes to speak?" I say yes. She asks me to walk her through the incident. I give her the timeline, the tow logs, the call recording, and the emails from the property management company. She listens without interrupting, and when I finish, she says, "This sounds like a case of exceeding authority and possibly false representation. I am going to open a file and request additional documentation from the tow company and the HOA. Can you send me everything you have?" I email her the full folder. She calls me back Monday morning and says she has reviewed the materials. She says the case meets the threshold for a formal investigation and that she will be contacting Linda Parker for an interview. She also says that if the investigation confirms fraud, the township may pursue charges. I thank her and hang up. Tuesday afternoon, I check the neighborhood Facebook group. There is a post from Paul Dumas announcing that the board has completed its audit and issued refunds to 47 residents. The total amount refunded is over $12,000. The post also says that the board is implementing a new transparency policy, requiring all enforcement actions to be posted on the community portal with full documentation. Wednesday morning, I get an email from Diane Mercier. The subject line is Management Company Disciplinary Action. The email says that the property management company has completed its internal review and determined that one of its staff members failed to properly oversee the HOA's enforcement activities. As a result, the staff member has been reassigned and will no longer work with the Parkside Snow Emergency Corridor Homeowners Association. I forward the email to George. Thursday evening, I run into Michelle, the older board member at the hardware store. He sees me and walks over. "I just want to say that what you did took courage," he says. "A lot of people were too afraid to stand up to Linda, and you forced the issue." I ask him if the board is doing okay. He says it has been rough, but the new policies are working, and the residents are starting to trust the board again. Friday afternoon, I get a text from Sandra. She says the board just received notice that Linda Parker has withdrawn her defamation threat and will not be taking any legal action. She also says that Linda has put her house on the market. I reply, "Good riddance." Saturday morning, I check my email. There is a message from Officer Renault. She says the investigation is ongoing, but preliminary findings support the complaint. She also says that the township is reviewing the HOA's enforcement practices and may implement new regulations for all community associations in the region. Sunday afternoon, I sit down with a cup of coffee and open my laptop. I pull up the records request I submitted to the township 3 weeks ago, the one asking for all HOA enforcement actions filed with the Municipal Compliance Office over the past 2 years. The response arrived yesterday. It is a 40-page PDF with timestamps, violation types, and resolution outcomes. I search for Linda Parker's name. She appears 63 times. I search for entries where the timestamp in the HOA notice does not match the timestamp in the municipal filing. There are 11 mismatches. I download the PDF, highlight the mismatches, and email the file to Officer Renault with a note This is the pattern you are looking for. She replies in under an hour, thank you. This is exactly what we need. Monday morning, I get a call from Paul Dumas. He says the board just received a formal notice from the township that the HOA is under review for improper enforcement practices. The notice cites multiple violations of the Quebec Civil Code and requires the board to submit a corrective action plan within 30 days. He sounds panicked. I ask if the board is going to comply. He says they have no choice. Tuesday afternoon, I check the neighborhood group. There is a new post from an account I do not recognize. The post says that Linda Parker has been operating a private consulting business, advising other HOAs on enforcement strategies, and that several of those HOAs are now under investigation for similar issues. The post includes links to news articles from 2 other towns. I click the links. Both articles describe HOA scandals involving unauthorized fines, manipulated records, and residents fighting back. Linda's name appears in both articles. Wednesday morning, I get a text from George. He says he just got a call from a reporter asking about the HOA scandal. He asks if I am willing to speak to the press. I say no. I do not want my name in the news. He says he understands. Thursday evening, I drive to the notary's office to pick up a certified copy of my dispute file. Pierre greets me at the door and says he has been following the case. He says it is one of the most clear-cut examples of HOA overreach he has seen in his career. I ask him if he thinks Linda will face criminal charges. He says it is possible, but it depends on whether the township decides to pursue it. Either way, he says, her reputation is destroyed, and she will never hold a position of authority in an HOA again. Friday afternoon, I get a call from Officer Renault. She says the investigation has been escalated to the fraud division and that formal charges are being considered. She also says that the tow company has agreed to cooperate fully and has provided additional records showing a pattern of questionable authorizations from HOA board members. She asks if I am willing to testify if the case goes to trial. I say yes. Saturday morning, I check the neighborhood group. There is a post from Paul Dumas announcing that the board has adopted a new code of conduct requiring all board members to complete training on fiduciary duty and conflict of interest. The post also says that the board is creating a resident advisory committee to provide oversight of enforcement actions. Sunday afternoon, I sit on my front steps and look at the bucket of ice melt salt. It is still sitting in the same spot, bright orange against the snow. I have not moved it. I do not plan to. Monday morning, I get an email from the property management company. The subject line is Enforcement Action Voided. The email says that the board has formally retracted the violation notice regarding the ice melt bucket, and that no further action will be taken. The email also includes an apology for the inconvenience and stress caused by the improper enforcement actions. I print the email and add it to my file. Tuesday afternoon, I get a text from George. He says the board just held a special meeting and voted to send a formal letter of apology to every resident who was improperly fined. The letter will be mailed this week. Wednesday morning, I check the neighborhood group. Linda Parker's profile is gone. Her posts are gone. Her comments are gone. It is like she never existed. Thursday evening, I run into Sandra at the gym. She sees me and walks over. I just want to say thank you again, she says. The board is in a much better place now, and it is because you refuse to back down. I ask her how the resident advisory committee is coming along. She says they have had 3 meetings so far, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. Friday afternoon, I get a call from Mark at the tow company. He says the company has updated its policies and is now requiring all HOA tow requests to go through a verification process. He also says the dispatcher who authorized my tow has been retrained. I thank him and hang up. Saturday morning, I wake up to an email from Officer Renault. The subject line is Case Update. The email says that the Fraud Division has completed its review and determined that there is sufficient evidence to support charges of fraud and exceeding authority. The case has been forwarded to the prosecutor's office for review. She says she will keep me updated. Sunday afternoon, I sit in my living room and think about the past 2 months. The fines, the tow, the hearings, the investigation. The fear that I was going to lose my reputation and my livelihood over a bucket of ice melt salt. And then I think about Linda, removed from the board, under investigation, her consulting business in ruins, her house on the market. I think about the 47 residents who got refunds, the new policies, the resident advisory committee, the reporter's questions, the township review. I think about the fact that a records request that exposes contradictions and edits was all it took to bring the whole thing down. Monday morning, I get a call from Paul Dumas. He says the board just received the corrective action plan template from the township, and they are working on it. He also says the board voted to issue a public statement acknowledging the enforcement failures and committing to transparency moving forward. I ask if the statement will mention Linda by name. He says no, but everyone will know. Tuesday afternoon, I check the neighborhood group one last time. There is a pinned post from Paul Dumas. The post says that Karen's group post gets removed and replaced with a correction, and that the board is committed to ensuring that all residents are treated fairly, and that enforcement actions are conducted in accordance with the law. Wednesday morning, I get a text from George. He says he just got a letter in the mail from the property management company. The letter says that the management company disciplines the rep who enabled it, and that a new representative has been assigned to the Parkside Snow Emergency Corridor Homeowners Association. Thursday evening, I sit on my front steps and watch the sunset. The freezing fog is rolling in again, and the neighborhood looks haunted and beautiful. I think about the rideshare driver waiting and rolling his eyes, and I smile. Friday afternoon, I get a final email from Officer Renault. The email says that the prosecutor's office has decided to move forward with charges. Linda Parker will be formally charged with fraud and exceeding authority. The case will go to court in the spring. She thanks me for my cooperation and says she will be in touch if she needs anything else. I reply with a simple thank you, and then I close my laptop. Saturday morning, I walk out to my front steps with a cup of coffee. The bucket of ice melt salt is still sitting there, bright orange against the snow. I sit down next to it and look out at the street. The HOA is quiet, the fines are gone, the harassment is over, and Linda Parker is never coming back. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next HOA story.